My mother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You are dead to me. Not I'm disappointed. Not we need to talk." She said dead. And the worst part? She said it in front of my grandmother's casket. I want you to remember that moment, because 3 months later, a lawyer in a grey suit would read 7 words from a will that made my mother's face turn the colour of old paper. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name's Casey. I'm 19 years old, and I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, in a beige brick house on a street where every lawn looked exactly the same. Same trucks in the driveways, same flagpoles, same Sunday church clothes hanging stiff in every closet. My mum, Diane, she ran that house like a courtroom. Every decision had a verdict. Every mistake had a sentence. And I was always the one on trial. My older brother Tyler, he could do no wrong. Football scholarship, golden boy smile, the kind of son you put on a Christmas card. Meanwhile, I was the daughter who asked too many questions, who didn't smile enough in family photos, who my mum once told a neighbour was going through a phase when I was 17 years old and just trying to figure out who I was. The one person who never made me feel like a disappointment was my grandmother, Eleanor, Mum's mother. Grandma Eleanor lived 20 minutes outside town, in a little white farmhouse with a porch swing that creaked in a way that somehow felt like a hug. Every single weekend growing up, while Tyler was at practice and Mum was busy being disappointed in me, I was at that farmhouse, drinking sweet tea, listening to Grandma talk about her life like it was the most interesting story in the world. She used to say, "Casey, baby, you don't owe anybody an explanation for being exactly who you are." I didn't know how much I'd need to hear that later. By the time I was 18, things at home had gotten worse. I'd started working part-time at a diner off 19th Street to save up for community college, because Mum made it clear that Tyler's football future mattered more than whatever I wanted to do with my life. He has real potential, she told me once, like I was something less than real. I started pulling double shifts. I started sleeping less. I started feeling like a guest in my own house. But I had Grandma. And for a while that was enough. Then one Tuesday morning in March, I got a phone call at 6 a.m. It was my aunt. Her voice was shaking. Grandma Eleanor had passed away in her sleep. I dropped my phone on the kitchen floor. I didn't even feel my knees hit the ground. But that wasn't the worst part. The funeral was on a Saturday. Grey skies. That thick Texas humidity that makes a black dress feel like a punishment. I stood at the front of the room because Grandma and I were close. Closer than anyone else in that family. And everybody there knew it. My mum didn't like that. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened every time someone walked up to me first to give their condolences. After the service, at the reception, I overheard her talking to my aunt. "Eleanor spoiled that girl," she said. "Filled her head with all this nonsense about being independent. Look where it's got her, working at a diner like some kind of failure. I should have just walked away. I didn't. I said something back, something true. I told her that maybe if she'd spent half as much energy loving me as she spent comparing me to Tyler, I wouldn't have needed Grandma's house to feel like I mattered." The room went quiet. My mum's face went white, then red, and then she said the 7 words I will never forget as long as I live. "You are dead to me, Casey," in front of everyone. In front of my grandmother's casket, which hadn't even been lowered yet. I didn't know what was coming next. That night, I went home, packed 2 duffel bags and left before my mum even got back from the reception. I didn't have a plan. I just had a 2009 Honda Civic with a check engine light that never turned off, $340 in my bank account, and a phone full of unanswered texts to people who didn't know what to say to me. I slept in that Civic for 6 nights. 6 nights in a Walmart parking lot off 50th Street. Doors locked. Hoodie pulled over my face, jumping every time headlights swept across the windshield. I used the Walmart bathroom to wash my face in the morning before my diner shift, and I'd put on the same uniform, and I'd smile at customers who had no idea that the girl pouring their coffee hadn't slept in a real bed in almost a week. Everything changed after that night at the funeral. My brother Tyler didn't call. Not once. My mum didn't call either. Not to apologize. Not even to ask if I was safe. For 3 weeks I was completely alone in a way I had never experienced in my entire life. I remember sitting in that Civic one night, eating gas station crackers for dinner, and thinking, this is it. This is who I am now. A girl nobody wants. I cried harder that night than I did at the funeral. I eventually found a cheap room to rent above a laundromat, paid week to week, thin walls, a mattress on the floor. But it was something. It was mine. I didn't know it then, but Grandma Eleanor had left something behind. Something that nobody, not even my mother, saw coming. 3 months after the funeral, I got a letter in the mail. Thick cream-coloured envelope, a law firm's return address downtown. My hands shook opening it. It was a request for me to appear at the reading of Grandma Eleanor's will. I almost didn't go. Part of me figured it'd just be Mum and Tyler in a room, splitting up furniture and savings bonds, and me getting some symbolic invite out of legal obligation. But something in my gut told me to show up. The lawyer's office was on the 8th floor of a building downtown, all dark wood and stiff leather chairs. My mum sat across the room from me, wouldn't even look in my direction. Tyler sat next to her, scrolling his phone like this was just another Tuesday. The lawyer, a calm older man named Mr. Whitfield, cleared his throat and started reading. The house in town, some jewellery, a modest savings account. Those went to my mother as expected. Tyler got Grandma's old truck and a small trust for school. Standard, predictable. Then Mr. Whitfield paused, looked up over his glasses, and said, "There's an additional provision specifically naming Casey." My mum's head snapped up. He read it slowly. Grandma Eleanor had left me the farmhouse. The actual property. 12 acres of land. Plus a separate account that had been quietly building for years. One my mother had no idea existed. Worth just over $180,000. But that wasn't the part that broke the room. Mr. Whitfield continued reading Grandma's handwritten note, word for word, the one she'd attached to the legal documents. She'd written it 8 months before she passed. In it she said she always saw herself in me. She said she watched my mother criticize me my whole life for the exact same independence and stubbornness that my mother had once been punished for as a young woman by her own father. Grandma wrote that she refused to watch history repeat itself in silence. And then came the line that made my mother's face turn the colour of old paper. Grandma had written, "Diane, if you are hearing this and you have not made things right with my granddaughter, then you have learned nothing from me at all." The room was dead silent. My mother's hands were trembling in her lap. Tyler finally looked up from his phone, and I just sat there, tears running down my face. Not because of the money, not because of the land, but because even after she was gone, Grandma Eleanor was still protecting me. I didn't say a single word to my mother that day. I didn't need to. I moved into the farmhouse 2 weeks later. I fixed up the porch swing myself, sanded it down, repainted it the same pale blue it had always been. I used part of the money to finally enroll in community college, business courses. Something Grandma always told me I'd be good at. I kept my job at the diner for a while, not because I needed it, but because I wasn't going to let one twist of fate make me forget what struggling felt like. My mum reached out eventually. A text message, then a phone call I didn't answer, then a letter that sat on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks before I even opened it. In it she apologized. Said she'd been wrong. Said losing her mother and almost losing her daughter on the same day finally woke something up in her. I won't lie to you, I haven't fully forgiven her. Some things take longer than a letter to heal. But I let her back into my life, slowly, carefully, on my terms this time. not hers. People always ask me if I feel like I won, like this was some kind of revenge story where the villain gets what's coming to her. But that's not how it feels. What I feel is this. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, the people who show up quietly, without conditions, without comparisons, without making you earn their love, those are the ones who end up saving your life. My mother said I was dead to her in front of a casket on the worst day of my life. But my grandmother, even from inside that casket, made sure I knew exactly how alive and exactly how loved I really was. If somebody in your life makes you feel like you have to shrink yourself to be accepted, I want you to remember something. You don't owe anybody an explanation for being exactly who you are. That's not just something my grandmother said to me. That's the thing she proved to me one final time after she was already gone.